Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Self-Care Summit. My name is April Seifert, and I am here with Brett Cotter. He is a stress relief expert who specializes in trauma recovery, guided meditation, coaching, and group training. Brett is certified by the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress, and his program is certified by the American Institute of Stress. He received training from a 35th generation Shaolin Grandmaster and the Himalayan Institute, and he's the author of 3 Keys to Managing PTSD. Brett, I cannot think of another topic that is more relevant than stress, so I'm so excited that you're with us today.
Hi, April. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of the summit and to spend some time with you today.
Yeah. Well, today in the summit is a really important day. I mean, they all are, but we're focusing on emotional self-care today, which can be really tricky for people. And I'm excited that you are here to talk about something that is so common, like stress and anxiety. It's something that literally every single person will experience multiple times in their life. So this is a really great topic.
Yeah, so I love talking about stress. I've been involved in the field since 1999 and never looked back. So I feel that it's as long as we're alive on the planet, we have to deal with stress. So we might as well get to the root of it, unlock it, and release it.
I love it. Well, let's start with the basics. Let's start, we're talking about self-care in this whole summit. Tell me a little bit about your definition of self-care. What is it to you? Why is it important?
Yeah, so self-care to me is just self-love, and it's giving and receiving just for ourselves, right? It's that act of finding the time, right? Giving ourselves the time to receive what we need, to fulfill that need that we have. And it's our ability just to check in with ourselves when we notice something's wrong. In the PTSD workbook, I talk about, your heart rate being your body's check engine light. So, you wouldn't drive your car around town if it had a flat tire, right? We don't do that. But a lot of us are limping into work for years with 3 flat tires, right? So self-care is just being able to check in with yourself and say, wow, what do I really need right now? It could be a yoga class. It could be to go to the gym. It could be a therapist. It could be just to express your feelings. It could be to meditate, but really checking in with yourself to identify, do you need something in this moment? And even when I'm coaching single parents that have multiple kids and, they have, one or more jobs and they got to get their kids' homework done and they got to get them to their after school practices and all that stuff. I just tell them, you have to put yourself at number one, because if you don't, no one else is. Who in your life is going to put you at number one? Your needs at number one if you don't. So I talk to people about putting themselves on the top of the totem pole. And if they don't, everyone else in their life is getting a second-rate version of themselves.
Yeah.
So that's not fair to you or the folks in your life, your loved ones. So it's just about checking in, giving yourself the love, the attention, the time that you need to be your best self.
It's a good question. It's a good reflective question for people to start with right now is, when was the last time you did that? Like, when was the last time before you were so hungry you couldn't stand it, or before you were so stressed, or before you felt yourself snapping at other people, like before it got to the point where it was, unavoidable? How many times and when was the last time you checked in with yourself intentionally and just asked, is there something I could use right now? Is there something I need right now? I don't think we do that enough. So I love that definition. It's really good.
Yeah. Self-love. Yep.
Yeah. You've worked with a lot of people throughout your career. And when we talk about things like stress and anxiety, it can feel very complicated and opaque at times. It can also feel very lonely. Like the things that we're going through are not things that anybody else has to deal with. We can get kind of isolated. Can you talk about some of the common things that you've heard from people you've worked with, like common things that either cause or contribute to stress and anxiety?
Yeah. So the folks that come to me, there's usually a certain amount of overwhelm going on in their life. And often that comes from like a very meaningful relationship going through a big change. And that could be a dynamic between you and a sibling, a parent, child, spouse, someone that is very dear to you and that relationship is now strained. So that's one kind of like general condition that people come to me with, or like a commonality. Then another one is lost loved ones, breakups, overwhelming job stress, and a major life transition, right? Like, I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to after their house burned down, right? Or like some tragedy like that has happened. And then just being stuck in like the same old patterns. You know, when I was going through my kind of like awakening phase, I noticed I was in the same old patterns with relationships. Literally, like it was like drawn out, same patterns, hit the same walls at the same times. And some people find themselves in that same old pattern with their career or in a romantic relationship, and they just want to break through. So that's the kind of types of folks that come to me for my coaching. And the common piece, even underneath that, is that each one of the folks that come to me throughout my coaching over the last 20 plus years, there's always been an original root trauma that was present in their formative years that was fueling all the overwhelm that they're currently under. So it's kind of like when they get to me, I help them just open up and let go of it all. So when we started out our segment, I said, get to the root and unlock and release it. And I'm a one-trick pony. That's what I do. I help people quickly get to the root of their stress, usually where it formed in their childhood years. And that was involving a primary relationship within the household they grew up in. So I help them go there and unlock and release all that pain. And the common ground and common denominator from that is that there's usually a relationship in the original household, a loving relationship that they wanted more from that person. That's either a mother, father, or sister, but somebody in there they wanted more from, that they didn't get their needs fulfilled from that person. So we go in there, we unlock and release all those feelings, all that pain, and that repatterns the original traumatic memory. So that's what the coaching does, and that's the kind of types of people that come to me for coaching.
Do you find that that's hard for people to make that connection, the connection between, because that takes a lot of self-awareness to, one, look at your patterns, look at your behaviors today, now, what's happening now, and say, okay, here's what I'm seeing myself do. That in and of itself can be difficult for people. But then to draw that connection back to, wow, there's a commonality there with something that happened when I was a child. How do they struggle with that, or do you help them with that in a certain way that makes that connection a little easier?
Yeah, so it's a simple line of questioning, and often within 5 minutes, we get down to that root memory and that root relationship that is responsible for all the overreactions in their present day life. And when we get there, their body starts to feel like they are there, right? So they start to feel all those emotions, and that's where we start doing the releasing exercises to release it from the body. And you actually feel layers of tension leave your body. And that's really the most rewarding and most gratifying part of the coaching program, when people experience that and it becomes real. And then when they reflect back on that memory, there's no more pain. There's just inner peace because they processed all the trauma and they repatterned it emotionally. So it is difficult. And I feel like what I do, I just kind of gently guide people along, safely surface the memory, and then I guide them through letting go of all the tension. So it takes a lot of self-awareness if you were doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Right? It would take years of either therapy or years of like meditation and really becoming an expert on tracking your tension and being able to open up those cellular memories. So through a quick line of questioning that I figured out over the years, we just kind of, use your stress reaction, your present day stress, as a flashlight to kind of go through your subconscious and isolate and quickly identify, the original memories.
Okay, so you called yourself a one-trick pony, but that's a pretty good trick. If you're gonna have one, that's a pretty good one to have.
Well, I'm also my own guinea pig too. So
I love it.
All the techniques that I, share and teach, I put myself through them in depth.
That's awesome. That's amazing. In your work, you asked a really poignant question that my background is in social cognitive psychology, and identity is a really key piece to a lot of the work in the field that I studied in. And you ask a question that feels very identity like. Your question is, who would you be without stress and anxiety? Can you dive into that question a little bit and tell us a little bit more about what you're getting at with that? Because that just piqued my interest immediately.
Yeah, so I feel with the current state of the environment, the collective chaos, when you
Yeah.
look around the world, how often do you even think, who would I be without all this pain? Who would I be without all this stress? Who would I be without all the anxiety? What would my life be like? What would I feel like? What would my loving relationships be like without all those overreactions? So it just starts a new thought pattern, right? You'd be free to pursue your passions. You'd be free to think clearly, to balance out your financial obligations and pursue your dreams at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to wait until you're 75 to write the book or, unpack that gift that you were born with. You would be free to stand in your power, speak your truth, express your emotions whenever you felt them coming up. You'd be free to have healthy boundaries with all those people in your life that love to suck your energy, right? So you'd be free. And that's what is the result when you transform those inner traumas that happened during our formative years that kind of set us in place in how we overreact in the environment. So when we kind of diffuse all those old bombs, right, and we clear the field, right, of all those old traumas, we could move through the environment fluidly, authentically, and just like, Bruce Lee used to say, be like water, right? So water goes around the rock, it goes with the flow. You're listening and responding to the flows of nature, and you're kind of like getting into your own divine essence and your own true nature without all the overreacting, without all that whole machine, right? Our stress is very smart. It remembers every single thing you went through as a kid. And anything you see in the environment that looks like it, sounds like it, smells like it, feels like it, you're going to have that overreaction. So it kind of clears the playing field for you. Identity is so, so important. Many years ago, I decided when I identify with nothing, I could be anything.
That's powerful.
And I could connect with everything. And that to me was kind of like, it just opened up the gates for me, when I thought about my own identity. But from a place of stress relief, one of the things that I feel is really important is identifying with the part of yourself that is observing the reaction, not the part reacting. And there's a bunch of tips for that, but really identifying with the part of yourself that observes the stress reaction, not the part reacting. What we normally do whenever we feel pain, tension, we identify with that, and it just keeps on going. It just perpetuates because we're identifying with it. So when we start to observe the pain, now we're giving it a little breathing room, and we're not identifying with it. So that's a key piece, which is also in a lot of Buddhism, which is, the observer consciousness, being able to sidestep the stress and look at it, not get wrapped up in it.
Yeah, the field of psychology is finally catching up to Buddhism. we are starting to have more modern forms of just therapeutic modalities, things like acceptance and commitment therapy and process-based interventions that are exactly what, Buddhists have been saying for so long, but it's this idea of taking the place of an observer. That is one of the most protective things you can learn to do. So I love that you mentioned that because it is a helpful technique and a helpful thing to be able to do in a lot of different cases in life.
Right. And just to open that up a little bit, one of the things that I teach is once you realize you're having a stress reaction, just listen to your stressful thoughts like you're listening to the radio. Watch the tension build in your body like you're watching TV. And comfort your emotions like you're consoling a young child.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a way to kind of identify with the part of you who's observing, not the part that's caught up in the reaction,
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Another one of your techniques, and we kind of alluded to this before as being, key to the way that you work with people, is to use breath work. So can you talk a little bit about, first of all, what it is, and then how it applies to stress and anxiety and self-care, which, obviously the key topic that we're talking about during the summit.
Yeah, so one of the first breath work techniques that I developed is called Stopper Breathwork. And it was born around 2005 because I was working with clients, helping them get over trauma. And they would get back to me and say, this is amazing, but what do I do the next time I'm stressed? Right? We live in the world, we have bodies, we have a stress reaction, we're hardwired for it. We're going to get stressed again. What do? So I was, over like the next 3 years, I was saying, okay, touch the tension, breathe deep and slow. And then after a few years, I really started meditating on how can we really knock out the stress reaction fast? Mm-hmm. So the 3 key steps that I found that work together to stop stress. When you first start doing the technique, it takes about 1 minute or 2 minutes to release the tension from your body and clear your mind. And after some practice, it takes about 30 seconds, and then you could get it down to instantaneously. So the simple technique is anytime you feel stressed, touch the tension in your body. For me, that's my chest. Mm-hmm. The second step is start breathing deep and slow. And the third step is once per breath, silently say the mantra, I'm okay. So no matter where you are, no one needs to know that you're doing this. The only thing they would see is, your hand on your chest, or your hand on your stomach, and you're breathing deep and slow. So I've done this while I'm driving, when I'm in the supermarket, no matter what's going on. I've had board members, executives do it in board meetings, chair meetings. No one knows you're doing it. You're just calming your body down so that you're Jedi mind tricking the stress out of your body so you could think clearly and address that situation that's right in front of you without overreacting in the past. So again, those 3 steps: whenever you're stressed, touch the tension, breathe deep and slow. And once per breath, you're silently saying, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it would be a good exercise for us to even practice for 20, 30 seconds, because I think you have a deeper exercise that you're going to lead us through toward the end of our time together. And so this feels like a key part of that. Maybe if we take just 30 seconds of having you lead us through just a few repetitions of that, I think it would be really helpful.
Awesome. So if everyone could just close their eyes real quick. Identify anywhere in your body, if you're feeling any tension, especially like the heart, stomach, solar plexus, anywhere in there. If you're not feeling any tension, you could put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly button. Now I want you to start breathing deep and slow. And once per breath, in the far back of your mind, you're going to repeat, I'm okay. Really just following the airflow in through your nose, moving down your throat, circulating throughout your chest, embracing any tension with your breath. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. And one more. Breathing deep and slow. I'm okay. And opening up your eyes when you're ready.
You can really feel that. That's very impactful.
Yeah, and that was the first time we did that together. So you could imagine if you practice at night before you go to sleep, I always have people lay down on their back, one hand on their heart, one hand on their belly button, close your eyes and do that. to fall asleep, you start to build muscle memory. So our bodies really want to let go of stress. The cells want to let it go. It's the mind that puts the cap on it and keeps it in. So this technique activates our body's relaxation response. And each phase of the technique is very important. Touching the tension, that's very important. That's where the cellular memories live that are fueling that stress reaction. Mm-hmm. Breathing deep and slow, science has been telling us for decades that just by breathing deep and slow, we can manually shift gears from stress to rest. And the mantra has been helping people for thousands of years across multiple continents. And the word mantra just means mind protection. And the reason why we say I'm okay is because that's the opposite logic that has programmed our fight or flight reaction, which is I must run or fight to stay alive. So when that programming hears I'm okay, your cells are receiving the life force and the airflow it needs to breathe and to live. After a while, your stress just goes, what am I really stressed out about? I have the life force. I'm connected to calm cells, right? The 10 cells are connected to the calm cells, and there's like an equilibrium and a balancing that's happening physically, and you're embracing all the tension with your breath. So as you practice, it's just like practicing anything, piano, baseball, anything. Your body gets the cellular memory, the muscle memory, and the result comes quicker and quicker.
Here's what I love about this technique. So many times when we hear from experts about stress and anxiety, we hear things about removing stressors, like external stressors from our lives. And maybe that is an important step. But when it comes to, I'm caring for children, I have a aging parent that I need to care for. I have to work in order to pay my bills, right? Like there are just stressors that life is going to bring us. You're not telling us to focus on anything external and try to change our environment. You're helping us change our response to it and the experience that we're having. To your point about water, right? While we're encountering that stone in the river, we're changing our response to it. So it feels like it's one of much more intention and control and agency than just trying to like somehow juggle all the balls differently.
Yeah. What I found was when you change things on the outside, it could take a day, a month, a year, but everything comes back. It might look a little bit different, but the pattern repeats.
Yeah.
So what I found was the only thing you truly have control over is what's going on inside. Mm-hmm. And if you make the adjustments there, the outside automatically starts to change because your outside environment is a reflection of what's happening inside. So when you start to take ownership of what's going on, I know some folks that are hearing this might be like, well, I don't have control of my emotions because they're all over the place. Right. But now you have a tool that can help you release all the stress, right? And that stress reaction, that fight or flight, is what's driving all the emotions that you're feeling anytime you're upset, angry, sad, jealous, afraid, anxiety, everything. So it's that stress reaction, that trigger point. So when we work with that trigger point and embrace it with our breath, our hand, the mantra, now we have a tool in our tool belt that can help us release it and authentically respond to that stressful situation without reacting the past. So that's the key with that, with that tool, I feel. And there's many, many different applications within the Stress is Gone method that we apply stress stopper breath work to bring transformation about our fears in the future, what's happened with our past. And it is a wonderful, wonderful tool for the present moment. And that's what we just mostly spoke about.
That's so good. It's actually a good transition into my next question. We're going to do an exercise here in just a moment. But before we go into that, I'm curious, two sides of the same coin. Are there people who, like anything we need to be aware of before we do it? Are there people who breath work is particularly beneficial for? And then are there people who maybe should be a bit more cautious or maybe it isn't quite as safe for? Just kind of two sides of the same coin to just round out our understanding of it.
Yeah, so that's a great question. From my experience, and I've done the stress stopper breath work with people, young children in elementary school. I've done it all the way with people in hospice care, people on oxygen, from all different walks of life across the planet. I've never seen a negative response to this. The result is inner peace. The one thing I will say is when you're under a lot of stress and you first start practicing stress stopper breath work, you're going to have a little ego battle, right? You're going to hear thoughts going, this is stupid. This ain't going to work.
Yeah.
And I always say, just stick with the technique. The ego battle is going to subside. And this new technique, inner peace, is going to win. You just got to stick to the technique. And it's a really good time to practice observing your stressful thoughts and not attaching or identifying with them. So it's kind of like starting the practice with a clean slate. And just like when you're meditating, you have thoughts, not attaching to those thoughts, letting them pass by like clouds going across the sky. So I have never seen a negative result from practicing really any kind of breath work, but especially the one that I have the most experience with is stress stopper breath work.
Got it. Okay, so with that, would you mind leading us through a practice? I think you have one that is a few minutes long that can just take us a little bit deeper into practicing what we learned a few moments ago.
Yeah. So I teach meditation 3 times a week. So we're going to do a kind of mini meditation using stress stopper breath work. So I invite all of you that are kind of listening and practicing along with us right now to just get really comfortable. Try to limit any distractions that you have, any other electronics besides the one you're listening to. And you could lie down on a nice comfortable couch in your bed or sit up straight in a nice comfortable chair. But I encourage you now to close your eyes, place one hand on your heart, your other hand on your belly button, and just start breathing deep and slow, using your mind to follow the airflow in and out of your body, taking silky smooth breaths in and out of your chest. Breathing a little deeper and a little slower. And on your next breath in, bringing all of your attention right to where the airflow softly touches the very tip of your nose. Breathing deep and slow, following the airflow in a little further as it moves through your sinuses, opening them up wider and wider as each breath becomes easier and easier to breathe. Breathing deep and slow, following the airflow as it unlocks and releases all the tension from behind your eyes. Breathing deep and slow, following the airflow all the way to the far back of your mind. Unlocking thoughts and releasing worries so you can just unwind breathing deep and slow, following the airflow down into your throat, unlocking and releasing all the tension throughout your neck. Breathing deep and slow, following the airflow down into your lungs as they fill up with life force right now. Allowing the life force to unlock and release any tension throughout your chest. And on your very next breath, breathing deep and slow, allowing the life force to flow into your heart. Unlocking and releasing tension from every single part. Moving through anything that was bothering you. Following the airflow deeper. As you arrive in a wide open space. Where there is no anxiety and you are completely free. Always remembering the way to this peaceful inner place, touching the tension, breathing deep and slow, and remembering to say, I'm okay. I'm okay. I am okay. And using your mind to visualize the room you're in, seeing the floor, the walls, the ceiling, and the door, allowing your very next breath to pull you 100% into this moment right now. And opening up your eyes when you're ready.
Mm.
So that was like a mini version of what I do 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m. in our live Zoom meditation class. And usually the version we do during the week is about 25 minutes long, but that was like a mini version of it.
I love it. And I love that it's a 3 time a week practice, because there's a nuance of this, right? Where we hear people talk a lot about their comfort zone. I think that should be rephrased as their familiarity zone. And we've talked a lot about in our lives this sort of frenetic energy, this anxiety producing just everything in our lives, that we become very familiar with feeling that way. And this consistent reminder that it's not that way. And the question that you asked before, who would you be without anxiety and stress? It reminds us that even though it's familiar, it doesn't have to be that way. And even though it's familiar, it isn't necessarily correct or right, or the way that we maybe should be feeling all the time. So I love that that's a practice that you lead multiple times a week. That's powerful.
Yeah. And I also do 2 weekly classes for veterans and first responders. Those are ongoing classes through the same, Zoom link. And folks can join the meditation group for free. We have that on the website. And we just really want to invite people into the Stress is Gone ecosystem. Like you said, the comfort zone, it really enables us to live a very uncomfortable life. If you think about the comfort zone, so it's just a matter of throwing a monkey wrench into the whole stress pattern that we have, and I feel like those 3 classes each week, it really breaks up, our weekly pattern with stress and anxiety. And it's been a powerful tool that a lot of people are enjoying.
Yeah. You just mentioned working with first responders, working with veterans. That really brings up the idea of trauma and PTSD. And you've written a book called 3 Keys to Managing PTSD, A Warrior's Guide to Overcoming Combat Trauma. Can you talk a little bit about how trauma and that PTSD response might be different from what we would understand as stress and anxiety? And then maybe, what some of the key points from your book are that we might be able to learn from.
Yeah. So the 3 keys to managing PTSD are: number 1, learning how to stop a stress reaction. And that's Stopper Breathwork. So everybody already knows how to do that. So you got the first key down. The second key is learning how to process trauma, right? Processing the original trauma. And the third key is meditating every day. So if you do those 3 things, that is going to take your stress from a 10 down to a 2. Okay. And the Army put out a study, I think it was about 10 years ago, that said if you do meditation for 20 minutes a day for 8 weeks, your PTSD symptoms get cut in half. So that's the third key: meditate every day. So if you just do the third key, your science shows us that you're going to reduce your symptoms by half. The other 2 keys, I just feel are so essential to turning the corner, and really owning the driver's seat, of this physical body that we have, getting back in the driver's seat, understanding how to manage stress, how to shut it off, and really owning our reactions and taking more ownership and bringing more self-awareness to our life and all the relationships in our lives. So to make a little distinction between PTSD and stress, I feel all of our stress, it's like the same blueprint, right? During our formative years, there was some moment that we had that was a scary moment, right? Where we felt isolated, or, our fight or flight triggered. And we, if it was a really bad trauma, we were in fear of our life. Now that stress reaction, our stress is very smart. Our cells are super smart. It doesn't forget anything, and it's hardwired. So like I said earlier, anything that looks like that original traumatic memory, smells like it, feels like it, all those emotions come up and we start reacting the past. PTSD is unique because it takes that and it puts it on a different level, right? Like it'll just stack it up, right? So if you have a trauma here when you're 7, PTSD is like the trauma is this big and it may have happened more than once. Combat veterans, often there's like 4+ memories that are just super traumatic.
Yeah.
Super big losses involving brothers, their fellow soldiers. And, that's super, super, super traumatic. And the toughest part about PTSD, I feel, is when they come back and they're expected just to be normal.
Right.
And that's impossible, right? It's like taking a Ferrari with nitrous oxide in it that's just meant to drive a 1/4-mile track and says, the owner says Florida cross country. Now you have a Ferrari trying to make it across country doing 250 miles an hour on nitrous oxide, right? How long is that engine going to last?
Right.
It's going to break down. So, so that's one of the main reasons that I wrote the book, to really give veterans and first responders a tool that they can use. Because I feel, you give the right tool to a veteran and they could do anything. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to take all my experience and put it into a nice, easy read, easy to follow manual. And that's what, the 3 keys to PTSD, managing PTSD is all about. And stress, to break down a little bit of the stress cycle, you have a stress reaction. If it goes unchecked, it turns into anxiety. If that goes unchecked, that turns into overwhelm. If that goes unchecked, that can turn into depression. So I like to jump this cycle at the very beginning and teach people how to break free from the stress cycle. Now, I meet people across the spectrum. A lot of people come to me when they're over here, mm-hmm. right? And that's when we do the work resolving those traumas.
That's so helpful. And it's helpful for you to talk about it as that continuum, because sometimes I think it can be, 2 points on this. One, it can be quick to sort of dismiss something and say, oh, well, I'm not a veteran, or I don't have PTSD or whatever, not realizing that so many of these things are on a continuum, and the exact same techniques can be very preventive and helpful for you before anything major happens. And 2, I would urge people to broaden their definition of who suffers from PTSD, because it can be any number of things, not just combat. Something that I've mentioned a lot in my work and a lot on my podcast is I had a very severe case of postpartum anxiety that in my first child that then triggered PTSD in my second child, because there were, as you mentioned, like elements of what that felt, smelled, looked like that are repetitive with the second child, right? Lots of crying and lack of sleep and all the things. But so I just give that example to say, I'm not a veteran. That was not, a scenario involving a conflict or war or anything like that. So I would urge people to broaden their definition of both PTSD and when they might intervene in this way, because it can be so powerful to support yourself in this way with these techniques.
Yeah. And I feel with the repetitive patterns, right? Especially with like repetitive relationship patterns.
Yeah.
It often goes down to something happening with one of the parents when they were very young, and a belief forms.
Yes.
When a trauma happens, you have the event, there's a lot of emotions, and then a belief forms. And the belief is how we now experience our world.
Yes.
So a belief could be like, let's say something happened with your father, he's out of the house. So now you're a young child, like he's never going to be there for me. And now your relationships, you find that that's a recurring theme. He's never going to be there for me. Or that's a big worry that kind of sabotages your relationships. Well, when we get back to that original traumatic memory and we repattern it with inner peace and self-love, now you're bringing that to your next relationship. So that's really, to go back to how we started it, what do people get out of it when they imagine themselves without all the stress and anxiety? They really break free from all of this and to really embody their own authentic true nature.
Yeah, for sure. I really could go down 10 more rabbit holes because this topic I think is so important for people, but we are moving toward the end of our time today. So I want to bring it back to self-care and see if there are any final tips that you want to share with people about how, around self-care or even stress and anxiety?
So to recap, we learned stress stopper breath work, right? Touch the tension, breathe deep and slow. Once per breath, you silently say, I'm okay. There is a technique that I developed during the pandemic called the traumatic memory release. So there's 3 steps to this technique. You relax, you remember, and you release. So the technique is stress stopper breath work. To relax your body, you lay down, one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly button, right? You remember the traumatic memory. So can I use you as an example?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So the first pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
A pregnancy is shocking, period. Super shocking. It's traumatic to the body. It's just overwhelming. So going back to the most overwhelming moment, right, of that first pregnancy, closing your eyes, touching the tension, breathing deep and slow. And now you're doing stress stopper breath work while you're holding that memory in mind. So you're going to feel your body start to stress out when you push the memory in mind and you hold it there. But now 2 things are happening, right? You have the memory in mind, and now you're doing stress stopper breath work. Your body's not used to this, because normally when you held that memory in mind, your body would be stressing out. So now you want to embrace the tension with your breath, breathing deep and slow. And anyone watching this, you can do this. Think back to the most traumatic moment during the pandemic. Something happened in the last 10 years. Do exactly what April's doing, breathing deep and slow, holding that memory in mind. Once you start to feel your body start to release some of the tension, did you start to feel that yet?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now we go to the release phase, which is the 3rd phase. And now you're going to imagine yourself inside the original memory, right, from your first pregnancy. And you, in that memory, you're going to imagine you're doing stress stopper breath work. So you're in the memory, you're in your body, inside that memory, breathing deep and slow. And you're looking around inside the memory, seeing exactly where you were, and you're saying, I'm okay. You're touching the tension in your body. You could also say, we're okay. I'm okay. We're okay. He's okay. She's okay. We're all going to be okay. And you would continue doing this phase until you feel the tension leave your body and that memory starts to relax.
This is my homework. This is literally my homework. I'm tearing up over here because it's amazing how just a glimmer of what has been traumatic can cause so much of a just physical and emotional reaction. So I'm taking this as a personal bit of homework this week.
Awesome. And then anyone viewing the summit, I encourage you to practice stress stopper breath work when you go to sleep at night. It's a great sleep aid, and you'll have the muscle memory to use it. If you want to use the traumatic memory release technique, it's just a wonderful, wonderful tool. It's self-care and self-love.
That's so good. Brett, you are powerful. Where can people learn more about you? Maybe join your meditation group, really get into this world so they can practice this more deeply.
Thank you for that compliment. And I feel the work is really powerful because it opens up our energy field, and I'm just the person that gets to share it. So brettcotter.com, BRETTCOTTER.com. You could hit the button that says break free from anxiety. You get a free mini course, 3 guided meditations. You get the anxiety freedom technique, and you're going to get more in-depth teaching on stress stopper breath work. Okay. And you get the Stress Is Gone mobile app. So that's awesome. That's a great place to start. Okay. And this May 29th to June 3rd, I'm going to be doing a week-long retreat teaching the traumatic memory release technique, the anxiety freedom technique, stress stopper breath work, It is a hands down life-changing event, 5 days of doing this work. And it's really amazing. This is our second summer doing the retreat at the Omega Institute. So if you go to my events page, you could register from there.
Amazing. This has been powerful and so transformative. And I would just encourage everyone who's joined us today to practice these techniques, to take Brett up on his offer and go and get involved in his free trainings and resources. Coming from someone who's in the field of psychology, the more we can do, even if you're feeling great, the more you can learn these techniques as a preventive, protective capability, the better you're going to be. Life is going to throw us stress. It's just the way that it is. So, Brett, thank you so much for being with us today. This was just a pleasure.
Yeah, it was an honor being with you, and I'm so excited and honored to be part of the summit. So thank you very much. It was great to be on with you.